Hello, Christy.
Hi.
Is welcome to everyone. Is very very nice to see the smile of Christy. Is to participate. That's already an excellent contribution to our chat. That I still have obviously to start. Where are you exactly, Christy?
So I'm currently based on the East Coast. So I'm in New York at the moment. So right now it's around 12 p.m. my time.
Okay, so it's not too bad. In fact, is in terms of timing. Sometimes we have asked people to get up extremely early and in the day, so is much more reasonable of what you are doing. In fact, we are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on YouTube. And obviously here on Zoom. You will have welcome to everyone wherever is evidently in front of a screen, as all of us, always, all the time. Is you will have the possibility to ask questions to Christy is in about 30 minutes or so. Is but you can ask your questions whenever you want, and I will put them forward to Christy. That is going to talk about digital activism and climate change, but not just. Is Christy, can you tell us a little bit what do you do exactly?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Christy Drutman. I'm the host and founder of Brown Girl Green. And Brown Girl Green is a media platform that's focused on environmental advocacy, as well as racial justice and social justice, tying that into talking about caring for the environment. So I produce videos, podcasts, blogs, and media that is at those intersections of using social media to teach people about protecting the environment, but also how to advocate for communities most impacted by climate change.
And you do it successfully, apparently, judging from the number. You have almost 60,000 followers just on Instagram.
Yes, I definitely have grown a decent following on social media these days.
The first question, actually, I thought to start differently, is but as we mentioned it, how do you get all these followers? What do you do? Is evidently you produce engaging media content. It seems one of your strengths. It's not obvious to get all these followers. How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think an important thing is to be able to provide value to people. So, you know, a lot of my platform is focused on education, but also like how to make it accessible and enticing for people. So I think a lot about how do you create content that is visually engaging, is providing value by teaching something new to people that may not know about a topic or a subject. And then ultimately being able to build a community, not just people watching you, but also you're talking back at them and giving them a space where they feel heard as well. So I'd say that's been the balance on how I've, I guess, accrued success on my platform.
Well, it's something that should be obvious to render a service, no? Or to focus on the benefits of people that not they follow information but not everybody does it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, well done. And your area, I have read also somewhere that you were lecturing at the California University. Are you still doing that? No, now, because you are in New York, you say.
Oh no, I do it virtually. So yeah, I do teach a class. I teach a class at UC Berkeley that's focused on social media for nonprofits. I have a group of students that have been exploring how to use social media tools to do storytelling about a real life nonprofit. So yeah.
We will have to follow ourselves some of your courses. So these two areas that you are mentioning about, one is social inclusion and the other is the environment, and you focus, I mean, one per se should be enough, no? But you do two, and what do they have in common?
What they have in common is just that we currently are living in a economic system and a political system, both of those things that are not conducive to the health and well-being of our society, of everyday people. There's so much wealth inequality. There's so much social injustice that's happening to so many communities around the world. And typically those communities that are experiencing some of the biggest injustices typically are also experiencing the worst impacts of climate change and also of a polluted environment, because these are communities that have been disinvested in, that don't have the same level of wealth or resources. And ultimately, when it comes to natural disasters like floods, fires, drought, things like that, they're going to be the ones that are impacted first and worst by those issues. So that's the intersection.
Sometimes this doesn't seem to be sufficient. The fact that this, I was always surprised or stunned by the fact that the poor people vote for the richest guy in the no, that is running.
I know, that's also an important point, is that like, unfortunately, despite those issues, like the way that like our society is structured is it promotes that you have to have wealth, that you have to extract resources to an extreme extent to live a certain lifestyle, that like pollution and all these things are inevitable when they don't have to be. And I think that that's, people are conditioned for that, even people who come from the communities that are impacted by these things. It is a really good point.
That's how, in fact, it would be interesting, no, is to understand which is the citizen perception of this issue is raising, no, nevertheless, also because of people like you that they have inform and little by little. I mean, it wasn't the case a few years ago, no? When you were talking about climate change, there was a lot of denial. Why to bother? Why to be worried? Now, do you have this feeling that little by little we are reaching a critical mass level of awareness, or not yet?
What I worry about is that, like, I feel like people are aware, but they kind of like tuck it away, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, oh, like, I know this is happening. It's an issue I should care about, but it's not my top priority, because it comes back to the social inequality. People are worried about having a job. People are worried about, being able to feed their families. So they don't really think about it on how caring about those things or maybe taking more action serves them or the people around them. So I feel like we've reached a point where people are aware that it's an issue, but I don't think we've reached the point on like people knowing what to do about that. I think that that's the next stage for sure.
We were discussing yesterday with another activist, and indeed, it seems that is to engage is something that obviously is not easy to do. But also, first of all, because of what you say, maybe you do want to get engaged, but you don't know what to do. How
Exactly.
can I contribute? Which is my small action that I can do? What would you say? What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about getting involved in your local community. I think there's so many different organizations that do exist that are trying to address these issues. So it's not about like going out and creating your own organization. I think it's mostly like there are organizations or people who have been trying to do this for a long time, but they don't have the kind of resources or capacity or support to scale that up. And I think that that's kind of, I think that's something people could do. They can donate to those organizations. They could volunteer their time. They could amplify that work and share that on social media. I think definitely like being involved in your civic engagement process, like voting when you can, getting more informed about like what policies exist in your
So
area.
there are not excuses, really. Come on.
No, I think there is plenty to do. I just think people don't really like have the roadmap to make it like easier, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's and that's up to like people who do have the expertise to make that more accessible to more people. So it's can't just blame people, but also it's like people do need to do something.
But it seems or at least the people that we come across is that is not really once that you are in it and you feel participating in a group together with other people that is actually rewarding, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's so important. You can't do this by yourself. It's impossible.
And what about us? We now is here at TEAVI, we focus on promoting media literacy, and therefore our focus is the use of media. How important do you think that is? And maybe we had a poll about it. That is how crucial. How important is to use the media these days in order to reach an impact? There is the whole issue about disinformation. Social media are good. Are they essential these days? What's your experience?
Like my experience with like trying to like feel out. Can you like maybe clarify that a little bit?
I don't know how much of the percentage of the work that you do, is it online or offline? And if it is, yeah.
Yeah. I would say that like, honestly, like if I'm honest, majority of the work that I do, is online. And I would say that like, but the thing is like, that's my part in it. I guess it's one of those things where it's like, I've had to find that balance of like being a media producer, but also understanding like, you do have to do offline things like having meetups and trying to organize people in order to like see these things pass. Because obviously you can have online petitions and gain momentum. I think it's kind of like in a way, the social media online stuff can like be a way to like bolster and like help with the work that's being done offline. But I don't think it could supplement or replace that. But I think it's one of the most powerful tools we have right now to be able to educate and mobilize so many more people and give them research and resources. And for me, like, I don't put all the pressure on myself to do it all. Like I view this as my form of activism because there's not enough people producing media and content on these issues. So for me, I feel like that is my activism. That's my role in the movement, is being a media producer. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I can call myself an activist because I'm not in one of those communities on the ground doing that work, but I am a media producer helping move that along. So I like to say that is how I contribute. And I kind of like to stay in my lane around that, if that makes sense.
It does. Is also because it's clear that you are media literate, so you know how to use the media well, and therefore, as a resource, as you say these days, maybe we cannot do. I mean, for sure, we cannot do without the people. Here they have said 2/3 of them that the use of social media is indeed crucial for fighting climate change. for instance, and is 1/3 of them recognize that it's difficult to have an opinion about this. And this is a bit, is because of what we mentioned before, is now the role, the responsibility is a good and bad examples about how you can use the social media. I'm curious to going a step a little backwards because you seem animated by this sense of injustice. First of all, is that's what moves you to do what you are doing? Is it?
I can get into it. Like for me, it's mostly because I care about it from a human rights standpoint. I just feel like it's wrong that people who don't have the resources and like are not responsible for what's happening with the climate crisis are the ones having to deal with the worst impacts. And for me, like, I think being a content creator and making social media about these issues really gets me excited because I think there's so many opportunities to re-envision what that story is. And for me, that keeps me going because I'm like, oh, wow, like there's so much there that needs to be done and there's so much work to be done. And I feel like I'm capable of doing it. And so I feel like I can like make a contribution that way. So that's what keeps me going.
Is also content production is so important these days also because it's there is a lot of stereotype material out there, and this creative part instead that is how to in order to engage people. What's the feeling or the feedback you get from your audience somehow? Is it they evidently they appreciate what you are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I consistently get the feedback from people that like I'm hosting conversations that they wish more people talked about, but are not. And that's always like the biggest compliment to me because it's kind of like, oh, wow, like I'm actually hitting topics that people want to hear about. And then having people also message me and say like, they felt like I'm the first platform or page they found where they felt like not judged for like how they view like these issues. They felt like I create a welcoming space to want to care and learn more. And I think that's always been like the most flattering compliment to get.
It's great to hear. Do you, some of your content at least, do they address both of this issue? I mean, is how do you promote diversity within your climate change actions?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing is that I usually prioritize Black, Indigenous, and people of color speakers. So I try to make sure that my platform like mostly has speakers that have those cultural backgrounds and don't just come from America. So I try to find that balance. And then I would also say another thing is I actually like have a green jobs board. So I actually now post jobs and opportunities for people. And I think that an important part of diversity and inclusion is giving people jobs.
Jobs in that area.
Yes, jobs in the environmental field. And I feel like that is an important act of addressing inclusion because you're thinking about like what needs to shift, right? And that's like reaching new diverse audiences to try to bring them into the next generation of the workforce. So those are some ways that I address it.
It's great that you confirm that there is an interest. Obviously, people have also some other basic needs in addition to fighting injustice. But I mean, they need to earn some money as well, or to find the time to volunteer for this. Have you ever come across these days or not anymore people that do deny climate change, for instance? Is it still happening?
Oh yeah, in like very big numbers. Actually, it's not that big. It's not that big. I would just say that like they're very vocal on social media.
What do you tell them?
It's a variation, right? Because some people are very open-minded of like, oh, like, I don't know, I've heard X, Y, and Z thing about like that climate change isn't actually happening. Those people totally down to engage with them, try to explain like what's going down. But for people who just flat out like deny the science or are rude or like dismissive, like it's a waste of time because they're not going to listen. So I feel like I care more about the in between and the people who are already like motivated but don't know what to do next. Yeah. And there's a lot more of those people. I would just say that the climate denier people, there's a lot more of them on social media, which is scary.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's more, but there's not. It's just like they're very good at being on the internet, and that's scary.
Yeah. It's for some reason they are extremely good, isn't it? I mean, it's not just real people or trolls and bots, obviously.
There's academics. There's actual like professors now that are like climate deniers, and I'm like, that is so scary. So I don't know.
Is in the USA, particularly, you are very. I mean, is a banal, simplistic way or sentence, very partisan.
Very polarized. Yeah,
very polarized. So people do always seek for arguments to defend their own position, regardless of. That's what you imply a little bit before. I think is they are unconvincible in a way. And but why is that? I mean, what's the way forward? You say you are working a bit on the people in between.
That's a really big population. There's a lot of. I feel like that's like one of the. I would say that plus like the people that are like already care. It's a pretty big amount of the population. So I would say that like. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. There's no point in engaging the minority that doesn't even believe it. Because those are the same people that think the earth is flat. Like, you just can't, like, what are you going to do with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it that you think also because on how is the media depict is for instance the climate change? I mean, is it realistic? Do they show it, represent it correctly? You think watching TV or other medias or not yet?
That's a really good question. I feel like the media, it's either like they acknowledge it for a second and then they like move on. Like maybe it's in the news for like a day or two that like maybe a storm is connected to climate change. And then we just forget about it. And again, like I'm saying, there's like this almost existential knowledge by a lot of people in society today that climate change is happening. But it's almost like it feels like this abstract like thing that's going to happen far off in the future. And it's like, why would I care about it now? And that's a lot of people. So it's kind of like, how do we engage those people to understand that, no, it's actually happening right now. It's just going to get even worse. So
yes, that's how we conclude yesterday. Act now. I pass to the questions. I see one that is asked from Facebook. How do you think that disinformation through social media affects our perception and beliefs toward climate change? Do you think, in fact, is three questions in one. Do you think that climate change deniers convince other uninformed people of their opinion? If how can we stop it?
Oh, that is so good. I love that question. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would say that like there is so many people on the internet, like I was saying, like social media, people getting big platforms, spreading misinformation. And that's not even just climate change, like misinformation in general. And I would say that like the only way to combat it in some ways is kind of like picking apart their arguments, like being able to take like, this is their argument that they're saying, and being able to use data and research to basically debunk what they're saying. And I think beyond that, it's like, I think people themselves need to develop their own discernment, because that's another thing. Like, even with myself, sure, I'm not a climate denier, but maybe I'm not going to get every single thing right about a subject. It's important in today's age where everyone could, I guess, be a quote unquote expert, that you are critical and that you question them, even if it's someone that you trust on social media. Even myself, like, people, when I used to get offended when people were like, you need to cite your sources, or I actually don't agree with that. Where did you come to that conclusion? I used to get so offended. But as time has gone on, I'm like, I actually really appreciate that. I'm like, I'm actually glad that you disagree with me, that you're questioning me. So I think even beyond like challenging these deniers, I think you should question everyone and question everything, because that's how we get closer to developing more critical solutions. So.
I appreciate, because we should question our own ideas, no? And in fact, it's a good it's a good indication, if it's constructive, obviously, is not to think differently and to appreciate other people's opinion, but you have to be humble or have your mind open enough to be able to do that. And sometimes it's not obvious. I have another question from LinkedIn instead. There are gaps around environmental information, and there is a lot of gray area around what choices are really good. So how can we move from theory to practice for a systematic change? I mean, it's complicated.
That's a very complicated question, because it really just depends on like what your theory of change is and what kind of action you want to take. Because we need people in all different sectors. So I would say, like, if you work in a corporate setting and you work in business, you need to like actually figure out like, is your company addressing its greenhouse gas emissions and its carbon footprint, and how it's damaging the environment. Like, being able to have an open conversation with your coworkers or even your employer or your organization about what that is, and what your impact is. That's one tangible thing people could do that could make a big change. I would say another thing is like I said, being more involved in your civic engagement process, figuring out like how like local politics, like even in your local area, how you can try to get legislation passed and work with other people to be able to change things in that way. And then I would say like, yeah, definitely targeting companies. Like, people don't target companies enough. I think being able to call them out on social media, or even like trying to set up meetings, getting petition signatures to call them out. Like, there's a really big opportunity right now to like specifically hold corporations and companies accountable. And I think that like more people need to do that, especially using the media to do that.
And probably addressing, just to follow on what you have just said, is rather than the corporation as such, the people that are working in those companies, because you find out that the great majority of them are quite good people, no? And they are, although they are labeled, and sometimes formally they have to report their position. Formally is you can influence them, going out for lunch, and they are very reasonable people. They have been selected to work there for a reason. They are not stupid.
Exactly. So
it is. So there is so much that one can do, and especially on this personal relationship, as you were mentioning, in the various spaces that are offered, and this is what we can you can, or all of us work on. I have other questions.
wow.
How can we involve low-income communities in actions to fight climate crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I think an important thing is figuring out how to make those things more accessible. So like being able to like make sure if you are going to plan an action or an event that it's like on a weekend, like not when people are working, making sure that like, I don't know, like if you are going to include more low income people, that like you buy them food for like taking their time, making a very like inclusive and welcoming community that like prioritize the fact that like these people don't have to be doing this, but like are, you know, wanting to get involved and trying to figure out how to make that a lot more accessible for sure.
Is your feeling, because it's a bit reassuring for us if you repeat it again, your feeling is that it is working. I mean, people get, I mean, these things that we have mentioned is since the beginning of our chat, that should be somehow common sense, no? They say common sense is the least sense is not so common. But it's working. I mean, you have been done this for some time now. Do you notice progress, achievements?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that like I've created resources that have supported that shift. But I'm only one voice. And I think that like there needs to be more people doing this. So I would just say that like, if anything, I hopefully have inspired more people that like they should also educate those around them and like raise their voice as well.
I ask you is another question here is today we will finish at 40 with Christy, so we'll have a 40 minutes conversation rather than our usual hour. Is so and the reason is that is Christy that has an important thing to be done next. So is but still I have time to ask you one last question. And this. Again from Facebook, how can we make science more inclusive for everyone and engage? This is the same. Does climate change gain the visibility it deserves thanks to Greta Thunberg? So I suppose this my interpretation of that is the role of an individual. So we talk about climate change also because of what Greta Thunberg has done. Do you think that the role of individuals as leader is significant, important?
I definitely think so. And we need people from like all different communities and all different backgrounds who can like be that voice to guide people and to like create that change. But I think it's like, you know, it has to start with one voice and then you have to bring other people in always.
Thank you, Christy. So will I will like to have your comments in a moment about how do you see the what is the future holding, or I mean it seems that this is a direction, a good one. Can we expect or hope to have which kind of world in the next 2, 5, 10 years? But before you tell me your opinion on that, is a bit a silly question. So you can start from. I mean, it's not silly, but it's a bit not well articulated. But I thank you very much. So you are really great. Thank you for allowing us to have this chat. Thanks to all our EAVE people, Dimitra, Laura, Ioannis, Giovanna, and everyone. And I briefly remind people that next week we'll have at Tuesday. So you have more time to think. Is next Tuesday at 4 here in Central European Time. We'll talk about digital citizenship and empowerment. That is something linked with what we are discussing now with Meta. Stacy Fitterstone and with Professor Tina Carazzoianni. And on Thursday at 6 instead, at the same time than now, on the 9th of December, we'll have a very nice discussion with Miles Deiler about the digital empathy gap. So we'll talk about empathy on Thursday and digital citizenship on Tuesday. Now is you, Christy.
So the question is, what do I see my work going into in the next 2, 5, 10 years, or where do you think the world is going to go in the next 2, 5 years?
What can we expect to see in the next 5 years? Are we going to have a big crisis?
Oh yeah, I can lay that out.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, if the goal is that emissions have to be dramatically reduced by at least 50% by 2030. So we have like 8 years left to like actually address like the worst impacts of climate change to keep it at closer to the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. Scientists now say that we're 100% going to reach, I can't say 100%, most likely going to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030 for sure. But now it's a matter of like, how do we keep it as close to those levels as possible? Because even at 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, we're going to see more natural disasters, more ecosystem collapse. It's going to be devastating inevitably. So it's like, how can we limit that? And if nothing is done by the end of the century, we will reach 2.7 degrees Celsius warming, which would make large swaths of the earth very inhabitable for so many people. So the clock is ticking. We do have 8 years to avoid the worst impacts. So these next 8 years actually are so mission critical to actually prevent the worst impact. So I would say that the time is now for people to get involved. It is not in 5 years, 10 years from now. It is like now. So yeah.
Thank you again. Act now is, although you say it with a smile, is obviously is the situation is extremely serious. So we have to do something about it. Yeah. Thank you, Christy. It was really a great pleasure. I wish you all the best. You are going to be interviewed from a very important people. So we leave you to that. We will put on the screen again all your handles and information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.